They say silence can heal a home, but sometimes it just reminds you how empty it's become. When Daniel signed the adoption papers, he thought love would come easy. He didn't expect it to arrive in the form of a small girl with eyes that looked like they'd already seen too much of the world. She didn't cry when he brought her home, didn't speak when he showed her her new room. She just stared at him, as if wondering how long this one would last. For weeks, their house was filled with polite nods, gentle routines, and quiet dinners. But beneath it all, there was something sacred. Two broken hearts slowly learning how to beat in rhythm again. Then one night, a knock shattered that peace, and everything changed. Daniel hesitated before opening the door, his heartbeat echoing louder than the rain outside. He'd learned to expect loneliness, not visitors. When he finally pulled the door open, the sight froze him. A young woman drenched to the bone, clutching a photo, her lips trembling. For a long second, no one spoke. Only the rain filled the silence. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke his name. Not as if she knew him, but as if she knew the house. As if it once held something that belonged to her. Daniel's chest tightened when she whispered the words he never expected to hear. "I'm her mother." Inside, Lily's tiny footsteps echoed in the hall. She peered around the corner, her big eyes widening at the sight of the stranger. Maya's breath hitched, her hand covering her mouth as recognition flooded her. The moment was fragile. The kind that changes lives in silence. Daniel's world tilted. Everything he thought was settled began to unravel. The warmth of the home he built now felt uncertain, too small for the weight of three hearts colliding. Outside, the storm raged louder, as if echoing the chaos inside. The silence after that knock became heavier than the rain outside. Daniel stood at the threshold, unsure whether to shut the door or open it wider. The woman's voice trembled as she explained she had been sober for a year. She wasn't there to take anyone away, only to see the little girl she hadn't stopped loving. Every instinct in Daniel screamed to protect Lily, but something in the woman's eyes stopped him. A kind of pain only a mother could carry. Lily, half asleep and confused, peeked from behind his leg. For a second, the world seemed to stop. A single heartbeat stretched between what was right and what was fair. Daniel offered her a towel. Unsure why, she stepped inside slowly, eyes darting across the space that now belonged to someone else. The photos on the wall, the tiny shoes by the door, the pink backpack. They all whispered that her daughter was being loved by another. Maya sat at the edge of the couch, clutching the towel like armor. Daniel poured coffee, but neither of them touched it. Words failed. Only glances carried meaning. Guarded, aching, uncertain. When Maya softly asked if Lily remembered her, Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to say yes to give her comfort, but he couldn't lie. Lily had built new memories here, ones that didn't hurt. Still, when Maya whispered the girl's name, Lily turned. Recognition flickered for only a second, but that second was enough to break them both. Daniel saw it. The raw ache of a mother meeting her child again and realizing time had stolen too much. Maya spoke haltingly about the years she lost, the mistakes she made, the nights she prayed for another chance. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for presence, even if from a distance. Daniel listened, each word scraping at his guarded heart. He realized that while he'd rescued a child, she had lost one. They weren't enemies. They were different sides of the same grief. Before leaving that night, Maya turned back at the door. "Thank you for loving her," she whispered, her voice breaking on the word her. Daniel nodded, unable to speak. When the door closed, the house felt both safer and lonelier. Upstairs, Lily slept soundly, her stuffed rabbit tucked close. Downstairs, Daniel stared at the door, haunted by the woman's eyes and the truth they carried. Family isn't about who stays first, but who chooses to stay last. The next morning felt heavier than the storm itself. Daniel tried to pretend nothing had changed, but the echoes of last night clung to every corner of the house. He caught himself glancing at the front door more than once, half expecting her to return. Lily hummed softly as she colored at the kitchen table, her innocence shielding her from the weight of adult secrets. But Daniel couldn't ignore the questions rising in him about the woman's truth, her pain, and what it meant for the life he'd built. Sometimes the past doesn't knock just once. It keeps coming back until you listen. Miles away, Maya walked through her small apartment, touching the few belongings she owned. A photo of Lily, a chipped coffee mug, a stack of recovery journals. Her world was small, but honest now. She whispered to herself that she wouldn't ruin things again. Yet every step she took reminded her of what she'd lost, and how close she'd come to feeling her daughter's warmth again. She wanted to call to explain more, but didn't dare. Redemption, she knew, wasn't something you asked for. It was something you earned in silence. Days passed before Daniel found the courage to open the envelope she'd left on his doorstep. Inside was a letter, shaky handwriting confessing her story. She'd grown up lost, fallen into the wrong crowd, and given birth at 19. When addiction swallowed her life, she surrendered Lily to protect her. Every birthday since, she'd written letters she never sent. Daniel read every word, and for the first time he didn't see her as a threat. He saw a mother still loving from a distance. That night, Daniel sat on the couch, reading the letter again. The words felt heavier the second time. He realized how many choices in his life had come from fear. Fear of losing, fear of love's fragility. Upstairs, Lily called for him, and when he tucked her in, she asked softly, "Was that lady nice?" The question broke him. "Yes," he whispered, brushing her hair back. "She was just sad." He turned off the light, his heart quietly breaking open. Maya found herself outside the schoolyard days later, hidden behind the chain-link fence. She didn't plan to stay long, just to see her little girl laugh. And when Lily did, chasing bubbles with other children, Maya's tears came quietly. It wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. Her daughter was loved, safe, and happy. She turned to leave before anyone noticed her, whispering a promise to the wind. "Someday, I'll be worthy of being called your mother again." Daniel hadn't realized how much space the silence had taken up until it was gone. Since Maya's visit, his thoughts had become an endless storm of what-ifs. One evening, he found himself driving past her apartment, unsure what he was looking for, closure or courage. He didn't knock. He just sat in the truck, watching the faint light through her window. Inside, he could see her moving slowly, folding clothes, trying to build a life out of broken pieces. For the first time, he didn't see a stranger. He saw someone fighting the same war he once fought, the battle of becoming whole again. The next day, Daniel called her. His voice was cautious, like someone testing the edge of ice. He invited her to meet at a cafe, just to talk. Maya almost didn't go, but something inside her said this was a bridge she needed to cross. When she arrived, her hands shook as she held the coffee cup. They didn't talk about the past. They talked about Lily, her favorite shows, her silly laugh, the way she hummed before falling asleep. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. Over time, their meetings became less tense. Maya shared stories of her recovery, the nights she spent crying in rehab, the people who left, the few who stayed. Daniel listened, realizing her strength came not from perfection, but from survival. He began to understand that loving Lily meant embracing every chapter of her story, even the painful ones. And Maya, seeing the kindness in his eyes, found a small piece of peace she thought she'd never feel again. One afternoon, Maya met Lily by accident at the local grocery store. Daniel froze when he saw them standing face to face in the cereal aisle. Lily smiled first, that shy, curious smile that melted every wall. Maya knelt down, voice trembling as she said, "You've gotten so big." Lily's tiny arms wrapped around her, and in that moment, Daniel realized love could exist without ownership. It could simply be shared. That night, Daniel sat on the porch, the weight of everything settling in his chest. Maya joined him, both watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. No words were needed, just the shared rhythm of quiet breathing. The pain that once divided them now connected them. For the first time, Daniel saw that this wasn't a story of loss. It was one of two hearts learning how to coexist for the sake of one small, luminous soul. Peace has a strange way of making you forget how fragile it is. Weeks passed quietly. Visits became routine. Laughter returned, and Lily seemed lighter. But beneath the calm, Daniel began to feel a weight he couldn't name. The more Maya appeared in their lives, the more he feared she might take Lily away. He hated himself for thinking it, but fear doesn't always listen to reason. One evening, when Maya arrived to drop off a gift for Lily, Daniel's words came out sharper than he meant. "You can't just show up anytime," he said. The silence that followed was colder than winter itself. Maya drove home in tears, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She told herself she'd overstepped, that maybe Daniel was right. Maybe Lily didn't need her anymore. But deep down, the rejection reopened an old wound. She'd worked so hard to stay strong, to be patient. Now it felt like she was being punished all over again for wanting to love her own child. Sometimes even the purest intentions crash against the walls of someone else's fear. Days passed without her visit, and Lily noticed. "Where's Miss Maya?" she asked at breakfast, her small voice breaking Daniel's defenses. He tried to hide behind a smile, saying she was busy, but children always see the truth adults try to bury. That night, Lily placed the unopened gift on her nightstand and whispered, "Maybe she forgot me again." Daniel's heart cracked at those words. He realized too late that silence can hurt louder than anger ever could. Maya stopped, answering Daniel's calls. Weeks turned into months, and winter arrived quietly. Snow covered the streets where she once stood, watching her daughter play. Daniel began to realize what he'd done. He hadn't protected Lily. He'd stolen her chance to love freely. The guilt sank deep, heavy as stone. One night, he found the letter she'd written him months ago and reread it. Every line felt like a mirror, showing him the man he didn't want to be. On Christmas Eve, Lily stood by the window watching snowflakes fall, her reflection small and lonely. "She'll come back," Daniel whispered, though he wasn't sure he believed it. That night, after putting Lily to bed, he grabbed his coat and keys. The fear that once kept him still now drove him forward. He didn't know what he'd say or whether she'd even open the door. He only knew that love had no meaning if it stayed trapped inside regret. The drive felt endless, the snow turning highways into rivers of white silence. Daniel gripped the steering wheel, replaying every word he wished he'd said. The town lights faded behind him, and for the first time in years he prayed. Not for forgiveness, but for a second chance to make things right. When he finally spotted the small diner at the edge of town, something inside him broke open. Through the frosted window, he saw her, alone, wiping tables, her shoulders sagging beneath the weight of a life rebuilt in quiet resilience. When Daniel stepped through the door, the bell above it jingled softly, startling her. Their eyes met, the kind of silence that carries more truth than words ever could. She froze, the rag in her hand trembling. Daniel's voice cracked when he spoke. "I shouldn't have pushed you away." The words came out raw, like a confession years in the making. Maya didn't answer. She just looked at him, searching his face for the sincerity she had once hoped to find. And when she saw it, her eyes filled with tears. She'd promised herself she'd never cry again. They sat in a corner booth, the hum of the coffee machine filling the spaces between their words. Daniel told her about Lily. How she'd missed her. How she'd waited by the window. How he'd failed to protect the bridge between them. Maya listened in silence, her fingers tracing circles on the table. "I never wanted to take her from you," she whispered. "I just wanted to be someone she could be proud of." Daniel reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "You already are." The drive back was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't hurt anymore. Maya stared out the window, her reflection mixing with the snow-lit world beyond. When they pulled up to the house, the porch light was still on. Inside, Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching the pink-wrapped gift. Daniel glanced at Maya, and she smiled. Not the smile of someone returning home, but of someone finally finding peace with where she belonged. Daniel covered Lily with a blanket while Maya knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. Daniel stood behind her, watching the two halves of his world finally align. In that stillness, something sacred filled the air. The kind of love that doesn't erase pain, but transforms it into something worth living for. For the first time, the house didn't feel divided. It felt whole. Morning sunlight crept through the curtains, filling the house with a gentle gold warmth that seemed to melt away the months of sorrow. Lily woke first, tiptoeing to the kitchen where Daniel and Maya sat sharing coffee and quiet laughter. Her small voice broke the calm. "Are we all having breakfast together?" The question made both adults freeze for a heartbeat, then smile. It was simple, but in that simplicity lay everything they had fought for. They weren't perfect. They were something better. Real, flawed, and whole. As weeks passed, a rhythm formed. Quiet visits, shared dinners, laughter echoing through rooms that once knew only silence. Maya no longer knocked when she came by. She simply called out from the porch, and Lily ran to the door. Daniel watched them with a soft pride he didn't have words for. What had once been fractured now moved with grace, not forced, not hurried, just honest. Sometimes they'd all visit the park together. Lily would run ahead, her laughter carrying through the open air, while Daniel and Maya followed at a slower pace. They talked about small things, school projects, favorite songs, future birthdays. The pain between them no longer felt sharp. It had softened into understanding. And in those moments, Daniel realized something profound. Maybe love isn't about who starts the story, but about who stays to finish it. One evening, while hanging Lily's drawings on the fridge, Maya noticed a new one she hadn't seen before. 3 stick figures stood under a bright sun, holding hands, one tall, one with long hair, one small. At the bottom, written in bright crayon, were the words, "My family." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Daniel stepped beside her, and neither spoke. Some truths don't need words. They only need to be seen. That night, the 3 of them sat on the porch, watching fireflies drift across the yard. The air smelled of rain and springtime. New beginnings. Lily rested her head on Maya's lap, her tiny hand reaching for Daniel's. He took it gently, their fingers linking in quiet unity. For once, no one felt out of place. No one felt afraid. Love in its simplest form had come full circle. Not as a miracle from above, but as a choice made every single day.